Hi, and welcome to the Mediatwits number 165. I'm Mark Glazer, Executive Editor of MediaShift and Idea Lab. This week we'll be talking about Apple's announcement of a coming news app, an aggregation app with 50-plus publishers on it, and also technology that will come in the new mobile iOS 9 that will allow people to put ad blockers into Safari browser, and what that means for publishers, possibly losing some ad revenues. We'll talk all about Apple's News app and possible ad blocking in Safari on this week's episode of the Mediatwits. But first, a word from our sponsor. Running your own business requires focus, and so does parenting. Mediatwits podcast sponsor, NextSpace, created a place where parents could give their best quality of attention to both co-working space and childcare space under one roof. Learn more at nextspace.us/nextkids. Also, come to MediaShift's Collab Space Innovation Workshop in New York City on July 15th at the Ford Foundation. Sponsored by the Donald W. Reynolds Journalism Institute, Collab Space will spotlight 8 entrepreneurial projects at media and tech companies, including The Atlantic, Thomson Reuters, and Google. Learn more at bit.ly/collabnyc15. So before we get into our discussion, I want to introduce our panel. We have Andrew Lee from American University, Eric Griffith from PC Magazine, Leander Khani from Cult of Mac, hopefully, Michael Sebastian from Ad Age. So this Apple News app that was just released, basically at the beginning they're going to be curating 50 sources from different publishers, including Condé Nast, ESPN, New York Times, CNN, and various others. The question is, will this be something that has a chance against so many other news apps that are out there? The deal is that publishers who are on the app, if they sell ads, they'll keep 100% of the revenues. If Apple sells the ads, they get 70% of the revenues, which is actually very similar to the split that Facebook Instant Articles is offering up. So it seems like another way for kind of a platform, tech company, social platform to kind of deliver the news in a way. Which is something that Apple has tried before with Newsstand and really didn't succeed. Leander, what's your thought on what's Apple's interest in going into kind of the news business, really?
Yeah, it's odd. It's kind of puzzling. I don't really know. Before Steve Jobs died, he stated this ambition that he wanted to help journalism, and he didn't want to see, he could see it suffering, and he held out this olive branch, and I think that's what Newsstand was. It was an attempt at somewhat, possibly benign attempt to make an iTunes store for content. But this new app is a lot more puzzling, and it's hard to know what their intentions are and how it's going to turn out. I mean, it looks a lot like Flipboard, and Flipboard's a great app. I haven't used the Yahoo one, but the Flipboard one, yeah, I'm a big fan of, and for us it has been, it's been great. It's been a really good platform, and they've done some revenue sharing. It's been a little bit spiky, to be honest. It hasn't been consistent. Some months have been great, some months have not been so great. But for us, it's been a net plus, because I feel like it's not cannibalizing our readers on any other platform, like on the web. It's been extra readers, Flipboard readers, who are now reading our content, and we're getting paid for that. So, in general, it's been good. If Apple can do what Flipboard has done, I'm all for it.
So you would join in with them for this?
I joined the keynote.
Yeah. Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, I put our RSS feed in immediately. I mean, of course, I'm sort of trepidatious about it, and who knows how it's going to turn out. But I think there's also a great advantage of being one of those sort of first movers, getting in there really quickly and really early. But yeah, then I saw the email they were sending out yesterday to everybody, saying, well, you're included unless you opt out, which is really, kind of unbelievable.
Yeah, that's pretty
Um,
bizarre. That they explain what they did with that email. They basically said something effective. You are opted in unless you send us a message otherwise, and we're going to make this pretty bad terms for you too, right?
yeah, yeah. It's pretty outrageous. Exactly. You have to actively opt out of their system, and of course, a lot of publishers I think are a little bit worried about getting into bed with Apple at such in such a way. So yeah, it's and that now they're hiring human editors too to curate this, which is sort of both good and bad. I mean, if you look at something like TechMeme, which was supposed to be automated curation of the news, I think actually relies a lot more on human editors than people realize. Um, and they tend to have their favorites. So they look at certain sources and they get all the credit and all the links, and they go up onto the leaderboards. And the leaderboards, I think, if you look at the leaderboards on TechMeme, which sites are supposed to be breaking news the most. I mean, it's a real mixed bag. There are some really odd publications on there that don't break news at all, and yet I think they're the editor's favorites, and so they get credit for this. But and that's important because I know that a lot of advertising agencies, especially big agencies, look at that to see who they're going to advertise against. So it becomes a revenue generator. So yeah, if Apple's going to be using human editors, then it enters into this kind of this sort of this wrinkle into it that I'm a little bit worried about.
Yeah, and that's happened before, even in iTunes, where they kind of decide they
Yeah,
had editors' picks and things, and it was never
yeah,
very transparent.
right.
Who's doing what.
Yeah,
Andrew,
yeah.
yeah, Andrew, what's your thought about Apple kind of going into with the News app and having editors at Apple and trying to kind of decide, well, obviously some of it will be personalized news, but some of it will be, an editor's favorite, right?
Yeah, I mean, for folks who track the Apple world for a long time, like Leander, the term Sherlocked. And this is the possibility here that Apple comes in and creates a new app that replicates what all these third parties have been doing and just completely smashes the category into smithereens because it's got control, it's got this app you can't delete, it's got this premier spot, and that's the possibility with Apple News, right? That it looks like Clipboard, it's maybe more useful than Clipboard, and suddenly all these other folks are quivering about how they're going to make their living with these with their products. So I think that coupled with the news that perhaps Safari on mobile platforms will allow for plugins, and almost everyone sees plugins equal to ad blocking, because that's the main reason why people might want to install a plugin is to actually control the experience of the web browser. Those two things next to each other are really interesting because suddenly the news you experience through the web browser can be customized to the user's whims, but Apple's Apple News app, they completely control. They're going to put ads on there. They're going to control that whole ecosystem. So it's really fascinating to see Apple's moves in this area. And I guess I'm glad that it's human curation, because if it's anything like Apple's iTunes radio stations and things like that, you don't want Apple's algorithms dictating what you read. But the job listing that they had on their site was really interesting to see what kind of experience they're looking for from that news editor that runs Apple News.
Yeah, and I mean, you bring up this whole thing around the potential ad blocker in Safari, and I'm curious, Michael, what you think about that. Just, there's been some talk about what that means for publishers and so on. What do you think about that if there is an ad blocker in Safari? I mean, is this a move to get basically people or publishers to move more towards using apps and not relying on mobile browser in mobile?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think that some of the commentary around that the ad blocking on the new iOS update was, I don't know, a little maybe overplayed because first of all, publishers don't make a lot of money from their mobile websites, so that's number one. Number two, I think that the big question here is how easy is it going to be for users to install this software? I mean, is it going to be like, are you going to have to opt out of it, or are you going to have to opt into it? And I think if that's the case, you're only going to have really savvy people actually use the ad blocker, and then the number of people that are seeing getting the ads blocked is going to be minimal. You also have publishers really coming to rely on native advertising for chunks of their revenue, and it kind of depends on what kind of ad server they're using as to whether or not an ad blocker will actually block the native ad. So there's a lot of question marks here, and I don't think if you just single this one thing out, it's going to be very damaging to publishers. But when you lump it all in with everything else that they're experiencing, then it's like yet another boulder in the road that they need to drive around, and just like slow down their funnel of cash.
Yeah, I know, Eric, you wrote something about how you said this really could put like the staff at risk for PC Magazine. I mean, do you feel like it really is more than a boulder could actually crush a publications?
Well, it would depend on the publication, obviously. I don't think it's going to crush PC Mag, even like the New York Times, who I forget the exact stat, but it was something like 50% of the traffic on nytimes.com is mobile, but only like 10% of the revenue, so it's a minuscule little bit, and it's probably minuscule for most who do a lot of publishing but have a mobile site. It wouldn't kill PC Mag. I think my story was a little bit more about the overarching thought about a company having control over the blocking option, and I wanted to write about how specifically Apple, I think, is targeting really Google, but also Facebook, Microsoft, anybody with a advertising network, because they have control over the iAd network, which provides ads in the apps. And if they could get everybody to only see the ad on their phone in apps, then that's going to be great for Apple.
Yeah, so it's really what you're saying is it's kind of a self-centered move to get people to get their ads to be the only ads that people will see. Is that right? Yeah, Leander, you agree with that?
Yeah, that was my analysis of it too. I mean, I think my understanding of it was that they've added third-party sort of ad blocking technology to the OS. And that this isn't just in the browser, but across all the apps. And it's not for the user. What will happen is that developers will create a switch, an ad blocker switch in their app or in their browser or whatever, so that all third-party ad networks will be blocked. And yeah, this is my first take was on this is a shot against Google's bows, because this is Google's main source of revenue. But and also the rich thing is that Apple's own iAds network, advertising technology does cross not just cross app but cross device tracking, so that they have built their own really insidious tracking technology to retarget ads, and yet they're blocking everyone else's ad network. You can't get cookies. They never put cookies onto iOS in the first place. So it's really kind of rich. Here, Apple is like that. This could be really damaging, because even though mobile ad revenue is minuscule now, as we all know, that's where most of the traffic's coming from, and it's only going to get bigger. I think a lot of companies are running their digital operations on their desktop revenue now, and they're terrified, because if this kind of stuff can block the traditional sources of revenue for the future, which is increasingly going to be mobile, you can easily imagine a situation when it's going to be 80-90% mobile of their traffic to media organizations. And it's really bad that Apple, the leading leading operating system, is blocking this. What is, I think, traditionally been a very, very successful and a very, very important business model for journalism. And it's bad news.
Do we know, though, how easy it's going to be for just the average iPhone user to use this ad blocking software? I mean, do we know if it's going to be like as soon as you update your phone, like all of a sudden all the ads are going to be blocked, or is this something that somebody's going to have to go into their settings and adjust?
Well, I think it'll be both. I think you'll be able to get a browser that will have it on by default. So it'll be, a third party could come up with here it is. It's a completely ad-free web experience, like Reader or Instapaper, but for the web.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have to. So people would have to get a specific browser, not necessarily the Safari app.
I think it will give you the choice. Some of them will be default. Some of them you'll have a little button. Some of them may even be specific to certain sites.
Yeah. I mean, do you agree, Michael, as far as what he's saying about kind of the ad networks? Because, Google obviously has a big stake in kind of mobile ad networks, and, could this really, I mean, this might just be targeted towards the kind of mobile ad networks, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could certainly look at it that way, but the majority of I don't know, I think that yes, the mobile is where all of the traffic is going. There's no question. 80-90% definitely that's what publishers will see in the very near future. But they're still figuring out the revenue model of what all that means, and it is very terrifying, as you said. But I just don't think that selling banner ads on their mobile websites is going to be the way that they end up making most of their revenue in the future. I don't know what it's going to be, and that's really scary, right? But I just don't think that they're looking at this going, oh shit, well now we just lost the number one way we're going to make money in the future.
Yeah, I mean, people have been, the banners and the pop-ups and all these things that are being blocked. I mean, and not to mention, people have been blocking banner ads on desktop for God knows how long, and I mean, that hasn't necessarily killed them completely. I mean, there's still plenty of people who haven't. I guess it just really depends around the ease of use and what can be blocked. What do you think, Andrew? What's your take on the ad blocking and what this might mean for the mobile experience?
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to the MacBreak Weekly podcast where you had like Leo Laporte and Andy Notko, and those folks are really deep into this. They actually make a living off of a lot of these kinds of things. They were on the cautious side. It's not a slam dunk as in the whole industry is moving one direction on this, or Apple's moving one direction, but there is that risk that it would dry up in terms of dry up some revenue streams for folks who are, small publishers in the net. I'm wondering whether there is some future with Apple News and Apple Pay, right? Is there going to be subscription content on Apple News? Right now, I don't know how much they've detailed about that, but one can imagine that once Apple News gets popular, some of the more premier titles show up there, and then suddenly Apple's got all your payment information, and it's that much easier to turn on that little switch saying it's only 50 cents, per week, or it's only 25 cents per week, and then there's where your revenue might come from with Apple News.
Yeah, what do you think, Eric? I mean, is there still a chance for subscriptions? I mean, is subscription maybe the way to go? I mean, people have paid, they'll pay whatever it is, 99 cents for an app, $1 for an app, maybe a subscription for an app. Is that maybe where this is headed, towards more subscriptions?
I guess it's possible. I feel like the subscription model for most journalism on the web has just kind of gone away. It's like not a big deal. The New York Times and the Wall Street Journal both kind of got away from it in recent years, and it's hard for me to see it coming back. But it's also hard for me to picture the banner ad being a big deal for a long time more, because sometimes they're out of control, even on our own site. Sometimes I'll tell you the one group of people who is going to be very thrilled with this whole ad blocking thing, based on the comments on the story I wrote, is the readers, because they hate the ads. I had about 150 comments telling me that I'm an idiot for saying anything positive about the advertising model, and they hate them. I mean, with a passion, and I don't disagree to a large extent. I don't run a blocker myself more as a moral choice or ethical choice or whatever, because I want to help my company and other companies who do the same thing. But they when there's 8 or 9 banner ads on a page, I definitely see their point.
Yeah, it's not anytime soon there's going to be big protest movement, save the pop-up banner ads or anything like that.
Yeah, very unlikely. But it's also kind of like we do a lot of slideshow stories on our site. People hate those with a passion too, when we could do one story on a page and somebody could print it out or whatever they want to do with it. But they get a lot of traffic, and they are a reason that we keep doing that. And that is, while that continues to be the business model that we have to follow, they will always continue to be slideshows with ads on each page.
Yeah, and I'm curious about where Apple's News, where their app kind of fits into just news consumption in general on mobile. I mean, it seems like it's still kind of a wide open field. Circa's had trouble. They seem like they ran out of money. There's Yahoo News Digest. There's NYT Now, which is really mainly from New York Times, but also aggregates. And Wall Street Journal now has a new paid app coming out called What's News. Michael, do you still feel like, and obviously a lot of people are getting their news through social platforms like Facebook. I mean, you look at the numbers, and even though people might not be going to Facebook for news specifically, that's where they end up getting it.
Yeah. So I think that I actually think that the Apple News app is going to be fairly transformative when it comes to news consumption. And I think that if we look at it through the lens of what Apple essentially did for podcasting. I mean, until Apple put its podcasting app on the phone and made it non-deletable, I mean, it was a very laborious process to go and actually download a podcast. I mean, I was just on a panel last week that was all about the golden age of podcasting, and everybody wants to say, well, it's because there's great podcasters, there's great storytellers out there now, which is obviously a huge piece of it. But if your mom couldn't easily download Serial with like two, like little swipes of the thumb, then guess what? We wouldn't be in a golden age right now. So I think that having that non-deletable news app on there is going to be really significant, because now all of a sudden you're bored in line, you can just open up this app, and guess what? You've got all of this news that you can flip through. So I do think it'll kind of be up there with some of the other kind of bigger apps that are in use right now, such as Facebook. And to answer your question about apps like Circa or like NYT Now, again, you had to find those in the App Store, and then you had to download them. And I know that sounds like, oh, well, that's not a big deal, but I mean, it's a lot. It takes a lot more work than just having it on your phone right there.
Yeah. Do you agree, Andrew, about this kind of? They've got the built-in advantage of being on the the non-deletable Apple iOS page. I mean, that's a pretty good piece of real estate to have.
Yeah, and not only that, I mean, that's also the advantage that Snapchat Discover has, right? People have Snapchat already, and Discover is just one mysterious click away. I'm still not exactly sure how to get to Discover on Snapchat. It's almost like a secret speakeasy.
You're not young enough.
But when you get to it, it's really amazing. I mean, Recode had a story yesterday, which is pretty fascinating. They said that some of those ads get 20 million views in a 24-hour period, which is amazing. And at 2 cents per view, that's like $400,000. That's real money coming in from ads on Snapchat Discover. That's more than I would have thought. So I don't know if it's surprising to Michael, who's really in this space, but if that's the money you can make on a 20 million view ad, that's not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the publishers who's on Discover was telling me. I mean, they said that they're getting tens of thousands of dollars a day from that, from the ads that they can serve on that, which is, I mean, that's more than just like a little incremental revenue. That's becoming significant right there.
Yeah. Everyone can't play in that garden quite yet.
No, of course. But at the same time, Snapchat is sort of lumped in there with, instant articles, and Apple News is saying like, oh my gosh, these platforms are going to destroy the publishing world because they're going to, I don't know, like destroy websites or something like that. I mean, it fits into a doomsday narrative, but I just don't think that narrative is necessarily correct, because I think that a lot of the publishers that are, again, fortunate enough to be in that walled garden are making, decent money from it so far.
Yeah, what's interesting is, when Snapchat had the Discover feature, we said, what is news doing in this chat app? And now we're realizing why, because so many people have installed that it's already there on the front doorstep of all these people. It makes complete sense looking back on it.
Yeah, and I think the bigger question with that though is that right now advertisers are willing to spend big bucks for that because it's new, it's shiny, they're hitting a really attractive demographic. But at the same time, Evan Spiegel, the Spiegel, the CEO, has pretty brazenly said like, hey, we don't have data on the people that are seeing these ads. And so I feel like that could potentially hurt them, because at some point those advertisers are going to want to see like, what the ROI of this huge investment is, what the return on investment is. And if they can't prove that it's creating some kind of brand lift or leading to sales or something like that, then that advertising could, dry up fairly quickly.
Disappear just like Snapchats.
Yeah, it could be ephemeral, right?
For sure. Well, thanks a lot, guys. Great discussion. I want to thank our panel, Andrew Lee from American University, Eric Griffith at PC Magazine, Leander Kani at Cult of Mac, Michael Sebastian at Ad Age, and Jefferson Yen, our producer. I want to thank our sponsors, NextSpace and NextKids. You can learn more about their program at nextspace.us/NextKids. You can catch us each and every week, every Friday at MediaShift at mediashift.org. We'll catch you next week. Thanks, everyone.